with Maggie. Maggie's right here by my side. And 3 years ago today, my darling, I went into East Los Angeles, east of Long Beach. I had just biked from Anchorage, Alaska down to Los Angeles, staying at my parents' place. And I decided I was gonna bike into Mexico and through Central America with a pup, with my first dog, all to my responsibility. And on January 4th, 2018, I found Magdalena at a shelter, at a LA shelter. And she was obese and pretty vicious, never to me. She always loved me because I was her rescuer, but anyone else around, she would bite, and she was fat. And day by day, she turned into Maggie. Her name was Maggie at the shelter, by the way. I didn't change her name. They said she had like someone just dropped her off at the shelter. The shelter didn't know much information about her. Some family just dropped her off, said we don't want her anymore. And she had been there for like a week or two. And she is the light of my life, and we've traveled Central America together, and we've never spent one day apart. We spent one night apart. My last ayahuasca ceremony, I had a friend stay at the house with her when we did that ceremony. But that's the only night in 3 years that I have not slept in the same room as Maggie. That's real. Got my morning cold brew with a shot of espresso, double shot. Busy day today, so we're getting it done early, right away. Very busy week, actually. Let's get right into it. Got questions from the last one. I want to start out always, and I realized sadhana is actually not really the right term for this series of morning conversation talks. A sadhana is really your discipline on your focused discipline of mindfulness, like doing meditation consistently or asana yoga or whatever. That's really your sadhana. These are more satsangs, which are like community conversations in my mind, but whatever the Hindu, yogic, Sanskrit terminology, we're just here chatting about the world, what's going on in my mind, what's going on in my community, on my farm, what's going on in the comments that you guys are talking to me, and politics and world stuff, and trying to get better. We're just trying to get better together and laugh and have fun and be a family. That's why I'm doing this. So Rudy, again, thanks for all the questions, asks, because I'm always talking about my privilege, this amazing life I lived. I grew up in a loving family. I've gone to great schools. My parents are helping me so much to fulfill this project of building a permaculture fruit farm, and I've had a lot of things definitely go very well and made it easier in my life to accomplish with my privilege. That's real. And Rudy asks if I think that the karma of my past lives have allowed me to be privileged in this life. Meaning, essentially the question is, do you think that you have a past life where I was doing really good acts of service, and that's why I was gifted this great privilege in this life? And no, I don't believe that at all. I don't even believe in past lives. I don't even know what that means. I think that my parents made sweet, sweet love, and this creature right here was born, and I don't think I am a soul that is separate from a body. I think I'm the creation of my parents, and what I'm experiencing is just my brain and blood and chemicals in my body firing off. And I don't think anyone has had a past life. And I believe in karma to a degree, which is, if you walk around in this life you're living angry and mean and you steal and you're an asshole to people, there's no way you're gonna have a good life, because people are gonna shun you and say, get out of my life, you're not good vibes. So in a way, the way you act, it is gonna be paid back to you based on how you act in this world. And if you're someone that's so kind and motivated and are doing acts of service all the time, you're going to live a pretty good life because people are going to want to do cool stuff with you and be a part of your life. But I don't think any karma in like, oh, I did something bad in a past life, or I did something mean 5 years ago and then today I stubbed my toe, maybe that's because of that. No, I don't believe in that in any way. I just don't believe in much stuff that's ethereal in life. I believe in, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, which is physics. I believe you should be cool to people and nice. But I think the reason I've lived such a privileged life in this life form when it comes to my family and stuff like that, I think is random chance, random coincidence. I got handed a lucky hand, and most people don't get handed as lucky a hand as I did, and that's just random. I really believe that. Do I do my blood work was another question. Yes, I do. I did it about a month and a half or 2 months ago when I was in Los Angeles, and I need to post the results. So I'm gonna make a video in the next couple days when I have time, going in and showing you all the levels, what my everything, testosterone, cholesterol, glucose levels, calcium, you know, protein, everything. So long story short for this video is literally everything was in range. And all I take is a B12 supplement, and I've been vegan for over 8 years. But I'll post a real video breaking down all of it. This was a really funny story. Funny and not good, but funny. So yesterday, Representative of Missouri, Democratic Congressperson Emanuel Cleaver closes the congressional opening prayer. They're doing like opening ceremonies, you know, political traditional shit in Congress, and this representative was appointed to do the opening prayer, which I don't understand why there's prayers when there's supposed to be a mix between church and state. I don't get why they even allow religious prayer in the House. Turns me off for sure. But they do it. And this representative, who is, by the way, just trying to be a good guy, literally just trying to be inclusive, no bad intention, but clearly did not think it through, said this: "We ask in the name of the monotheistic God, Braham and God, known by many names, by many different faiths, amen, and a woman." Literally, he thought the word amen was a gendered word. And so in order to try to be inclusive for 2021, he said amen and a woman to close down the prayer. And I'm reading from this article, I'm reading about it. While Cleaver may have been trying to be inclusive to women, amen is not a gendered word. The word translates from Hebrew to mean so be it. So at the end of your prayer, you say, so be it. It has no, like the etymology, what the word actually is has nothing to do with men or women. And he didn't do any research and thought, oh, it probably just means amen, like, come on, men, let's cheer, in some traditional religious sense, and said amen and a woman. Now, obviously, like, who cares? That's not like, that harms anyone, even though he kind of got it wrong. But what it does harm is we're in this situation in politics and in culture where if you're woke or progressive or want to be inclusive, like I would say I'm one of those people, a progressive, very liberal. These are the kind of things that conservatives and even centrist people make fun of liberal people who are trying to push progress and inclusion. Because he fucked up and said amen and a women, even though it's not even a gendered word, Republicans and conservative people will see that and say, look at how dumb these woke people are. They're so out of touch. They don't even know what they're talking about, when we're trying to talk about real things like inclusion for your sexual identity or trans people or whatever. So that's why I think this is a bummer, because when Democrats try to be overly woke, there is such thing as being overly woke to the point where I think it hurts our belief system and what we're trying to do. I think the trans athletes in sports argument is another one that is not good for the rational woke progressive movement. If you don't know, there's pretty big debate going on in sports and the private sector and politics where people are trying to figure out, okay, if you were born a man, for instance, penis, male, higher elevated levels of testosterone, all the traditional metrics of being a man, having a penis, not having boobs, growing facial hair, higher testosterone levels, all that, it's chromosome shit. If you've lived your life as a man we have the ability to build muscle easier than women. Now, are there women born with vaginas who can work out really hard and be way buffer than some men who don't work out? Of course. I watch the UFC. All those women can beat the living crap out of me and 90-something% of men probably. But they're the anomaly. It is easier for men who train to build muscle and bigger muscle than women who train. That's not controversial, that's a fact. That's why we've separated gender in sports. It's not fair for Usain Bolt, fastest sprinter in the world, to compete against the fastest female sprinter, because he's gonna win every time. It's just genetics. That's nothing to be emotional about. And so imagine you've been living your life as a man, and then you transition and you're trans, and that's totally fine, and want to be considered a female. Should you be then able to compete in female sports? I think that's the biggest no-brainer. No, you shouldn't be able to. That's not fair. It's literally not fair. And there's people who are so overly woke that say, no, if you feel inside that you're a woman, me, Jackson, I decide today, later in my life, midway through my life, I'm a woman, I should be able to go play in official female sports. That's so unfair. I have all the genetic advantages of being able to be bigger and stronger and build muscle easier than women can, and that's totally unfair to me. But there's legitimate people in politics and in sports who are overly woke, who are trying to say that no, if whatever you identify, you should be able to compete in that sport. I mean, imagine if I trained as a male UFC fighter and a martial artist, and in my late 20s I decided I wanted to beat up women in the cage. That's so fucked up. That's overly wokeness, and I think it hurts the progressive movement. What do you think? Closing off this morning conversation, this is my segment called Spiritual Shit. I have written in my notes, I want to share with you all my advice for how to gain a larger, deeper, more truthful perspective on your life on planet Earth, which is instantly going to make you happier. Let me explain. One part of this life and living is we get sucked into our own bubble. Meaning, let's say my life, for instance. As we discussed earlier, I grew up privileged, loving parents, great schools and education. I grew up in Los Angeles. It was warm all the time and nice houses. And I had nice things. So that's all great. But when you grow up, and let's say your life was the opposite. Let's say your life was abuse in the house, hard times financially, getting bullied at school, shitty stuff. When you only live in your bubble of what you know, you do not actually fully understand your place on a broader perspective on this planet. For instance, some people say 2020 was the worst year ever, Trump, and I could only go to the drive-through Starbucks because you didn't have indoor seating. It's the worst year ever. If you try to gain a larger perspective, and I'm going to give you tips right after I explain what I'm talking about on how to get this larger perspective and get out of your bubble, I think you would realize, wow, 100 years ago, we didn't have a lot of the same, or 200 years ago, people were throwing buckets of shit in the street because we didn't have good plumbing, and you would get E. coli. And women in Saudi Arabia only gained the right to drive like a couple years ago. But here we are complaining about 2020 because the Starbucks only has drive-through or something. So look, I'm not trying to say that we're not in hard times. Of course, the government telling you can't work and then not giving you stimulus checks, and Trump's a fucking racist, misogynistic motherfucker who's been the president for 4 years. That's hard on people. That's difficult. I'm not saying it's not. But I think we all fall into the trap of viewing the entire world through the lens of the life that we grew up in. And when I was growing up, when I became a late teen, and I know a lot of people get angsty and a little depressed when they're in their late teens, but I was feeling that kind of emptiness. And what fixed it and allowed me to have so much more gratitude about my life and about my place on planet Earth is when I exited my bubble that I grew up in, and I got on a bicycle and I rode into Central America and slept in houses and on the side of the road, dirty and tired and scared, in foreign places with people who had pretty much $0 and lived on a dirt floor cooking tortillas and growing corn and living in their community with no internet connection. And after experiencing, and you know through my videos, I did that for years, and experiencing the way that other people live, and when I lived in a small village on the island of Borneo in Indonesia when I was 19, taking a gap year before I went to college, and just increasing my perspective, getting out of your bubble. And that allowed me to be so grateful of every small privilege or big privilege and victory I have in my life, so that whenever I feel a little sad or depressed or empty, it's a slap in the face when I remember the villages in Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua that I lived in with people who have absolutely nothing, and they don't know what it's like to grow up in Hollywood and to have a YouTube channel and to have high-speed internet and to have gone to a really good college and high school. They don't know that shit. And I do, and I know their way of life, and I'm so lucky and privileged and blessed, and I literally just live happy all the time because I have a greater perspective on how privileged I am. But a lot of people are privileged, even in a small privilege, like growing up in the US and just having air conditioning and having even a cell phone. Even if times are hard and you're struggling, there are people who are struggling so much harder, who live on the fucking coast of the ocean or river in East Asia, and due to climate change, because we're burning fossil fuels, the sea level is rising and flooding their entire town and home, and they're fucked. They're gonna be refugees. If you're watching this YouTube channel, you're probably more privileged than those people. And so getting a larger perspective, and here's where my tips come in, it's going to make you a much happier person in perspective of what we're experiencing in this life. No matter how hard times get in our own life, the way to gain perspective is number one, to travel, to go and experience cultures and lifestyles that don't have as much privilege as you. That is going to make you a happier, better person, because you're going to understand how crazy this life is for some people, like I understand, because of the travel experiences I've gotten. And look, some people, you might be saying, well, Jackson, the ability for you to get that perspective is because you are privileged and can go travel. That is true, but I meet a lot of travelers as well who have zero money, and you get on a fucking bus or on a bicycle or stick your thumb out on the side of the road and hitchhike with $100 in your pocket and do what I did, knock on doors and ask people around the world, hey, I'm traveling, can I pitch a tent or sleep on your floor? I did that for years. Use the couch surfing app, you get free stay. Use the woofing app, where you can go on free farm stays in exchange for work. You can travel on the cheap. People do it all the time. So traveling is the biggest way to get a better perspective on this life that you're living in your privilege. Reading and learning about history. Realizing how lucky we are to live in the 21st century, where we have Wi-Fi and roads, and most people go to jail or get imprisoned if they rape someone, versus most of human history where men were just killing and raping and pillaging frickin' underprivileged people as they're colonizing over the world. Read about history, realize how lucky we are where we are now compared to how the world functioned in the last 200,000 years of human history. Talk to your close friends who are going through shit. When we only live in our own minds and think about our own issues, it's easy to feel like a victim. So when you feel like that and shit's not going well and you're sad about something, call up a friend who you know is gonna feel good to talk with a loved one and who's probably going through something harder than you are. Get some fucking perspective on your life. Those are my recommendations. Much love, Dream Extreme. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for the support. If you like this content, I'm gonna keep doing it. It's always gonna be free. And if you wanna help us support our fruit farm endeavors, give me a $2, $5, whatever donation on Patreon. Really support it, and you get exclusive videos on there, and my Plantreon podcast is now posted on there. And you might be saying, you talked about this whole episode how privileged you are and your parents have money and all that, but you have to understand that's not a unlimited resource. I know some people are in a situation whose parents are actually, multi-millionaires or billionaires who never have to work. That's not my situation. My parents are helping me fulfill my dreams, but I don't have a blank check, and they're not supporting my life for eternity. When I was biking and traveling, I did that all on my own money. When I graduated college and decided to get on a bike instead of getting a job, it's not like my parents said, we'll fund your little bike trip. No, I worked. I taught yoga and ceramics in college. And I work on YouTube and make money on YouTube and through my Patreon, and that is how I supported myself during my travels. And while my parents are helping me build the infrastructure on my fruit farm here, it's my responsibility to make money from it, and I do that through YouTube and through hosting events. So don't think that I'm just living on my parents' dime for eternity. They help me so much, but I'm not in that kind of situation where I don't ever have to work, and that is why I ask for your support on Patreon. Much love, Dream Extreme. Have a great day. I finished my coffee.